we'll just give it a few more moments. Maybe others will join and we'll just get started. Also, waiting for Thijs, but I was just going to say a few words. So the point of this format is that based on feedback and our own kind of feeling for this, we want to move away from this audience, presenter approach to facilitate an environment where people feel like they're in one space. Because at the end of the day, what we're building is not, a company business as usual, but we're creating, a community-focused infrastructure, and we want to reflect that in our town halls. So that is again to say, if you're in this room, feel free to unmute yourself and chime in, especially now where there's not many of us here. Very welcome. So it doesn't become a monologue, and we can also hear what everyone has to say. Alternatively, if you don't feel like turning on your mic, you can also go to the community chat, which is a text channel. I'm going to be keeping an eye on that, and any questions or inputs that you have there, just feel free to post. And the idea is that we will use this channel for all the forthcoming town halls so that there's a continuity there. So those are just some kind of housekeeping that we have. And then the agenda for today is also a bit different format. We're trying out this podcast format where I'm going to be your host, as always, but I'll be inviting also Thijs, Jonas, Philip, and Lucas to share and talk about some topics. So with Thijs, we'll be touching on the roadmap and where we're at, both technically and also the adoption plan. We'll talk about the accomplishments and also the challenges that we faced. With Jonas, we'll be actually diving a little bit into the research and thinking behind the adoption plan that we've been doing so far, and touching on this idea of alternative economies. And later on, Philip and Lucas will give us a little status on what's going on the network level. Hey, Javanso and Yagaran, thanks for joining. I was just running through a bit of housekeeping. Basically, feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like to add anything. And similarly, feel free to use the community chat channel if you want to post any ideas or thoughts or questions there throughout the session. Does anyone have any questions or input before we start? Okay, I'll take the silence as no questions. So, Thijs, are you here?
Hey, Irina, can you hear me?
Hey. Yes, I can hear you. Hey.
Okay, cool. I didn't hear everything you said before because I can only hear all the beeps when people are getting in and out of the channel. And I don't know why, but I actually thought I had sound on, but it turned out I hadn't had sound on. I didn't hear anything of what you said, to be honest. So, sorry.
It's okay. I was just going through some housekeeping and how people can interact in the session. I've encouraged people to, unmute themselves if they want to contribute to something, or post something in the chat, because we're testing out a new format and we're testing it with you guys. So all input is encouraged at this point. And I just wanted to invite you to have a chat on the technical and adoption roadmaps that we have and where we're at. Maybe we can start with a reflection on last year, and from the technical point of view, it'll be great if we can talk a little bit about what do you think the three most significant accomplishments have been. And then we can also talk about the challenges we've encountered before we move on to talking about the adoption. How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds perfect. Sure. So it's only me and you in the chat here, right? No.
It's everybody.
Everybody.
But
We can all chime in if we want to. It's open for all. But
yes, exactly.
get
So we'll lead the conversation. But if anyone has anything to say, just like Christian did now, your signal was a bit off, so you cut out. But if anyone wants to contribute, please feel free to do that. Especially because in the room we have some core developers, we have founder, we have people in the community, we have from marketing, so also app developers. So there are people in the room who also have very specific knowledge on things. So if you feel like contributing, please do. But yeah, but let's start. So, Thijs, what do you think the main accomplishments have been last year? If we take a little retrospective reflection now on last year.
Yeah, it is that we got the mainnet live, the first version of the mainnet live, right, in December, 7th of December. That's clearly the biggest achievement for this project ever. And that actually it was a very it was a lot of hard work basically. As some of you probably know, we actually tried to go live the year before as well. And in the end, we gave up simply because we could not stabilize the system. Yeah, and that was basically a fiasco, right? So we took a new approach last February last year, where we fully redone the processes, the quality insurance, and so forth, the architecture, how we test, and all that has been implemented in the architecture, the new way of testing, a lot of testing, a lot of implementation. I mean, the team has done so much hard work there, like insanely much work, and learned a lot on this way. And that's why we basically went live in December. So that's for sure the biggest achievement there, and that was also our main goal last year, to make the core production work and deliver the core system. And of course, then also we delivered applications to use with the systems. We delivered a portal so you can get paid out your tokens. You can transfer the token to each other. Yeah, and so forth. So those things has also been delivered, which has also been quite an accomplishment. Yeah, that's like the main accomplishment from on the product side last year, on the technical side.
Yeah, for sure, that was a big one. I know how hard all the core team was working, also in the lead up to Christmas to deliver the mainnet. And it's great to have a working system. And actually, yeah, later on, Philip and Lucas will give us a little status on what's going on in that area. And you said that you took a new approach. In what sense, and what were some of the challenges that you came across?
Okay, so when you do a complex system project or a software engineering project, there are many risks and uncertainties, basically things you don't know, and there are a lot of those, especially when you build a system from scratch. And that means you just need to get a process where you learn as quick as possible, because this is the only way you can actually succeed. There is no way we could look like how others did it. We needed to implement from scratch. We need to do all the testing. We need to learn of all the mistakes we did and all the learnings and all the tests. That's why we took an approach called you could say continuous delivery, where the main idea is basically to get feedback quick, so you get quick learnings from test or from test of the system all the time when you do something. So when you implement a new feature, you test it. When you correct something in the system, it's tested automatically all the time. So it's an approach where you can all the time be sure about the quality which you already built, because it's tested automatically all the time. but also when you implement something new, you test it all the time as well. So it's a very thorough process, and that requires a lot of automation and pretty advanced testing suite tool, which has also been developed at that point in time as well. The last year, or been matured for sure. And also the whole, you could say, the software delivery process has also been, I don't know, I think it's been through like 4 iterations now or something now. That's actually a huge work that has been done there, just to get such a system actually, you could say, to get the production of the software working with the right quality, because this system is you could say a core system. It's a critical system where it's a data transaction system where you cannot allow things not to work. So it needs to have the right quality as well. So that is also the approach you need to take when you deliver such a project. And that's exactly what we implemented to get that level of quality, so we can actually go live and make sure we get a stable system that actually performs. So that's basically the main approach, and that also meant the team successfully launched the project in December, and it's basically been more or less stable since, right? So of course there is found bugs and so forth, but the quality has been extremely high from the outset, and of course there will always be new bugs and additions and so forth. But that was what I meant with the new process, and it's basically a team effort. It's a way that you work together as a team.
Yeah, I think it's really important to stress that this system is being built from scratch. So it's a low-level system where the whole infrastructure has been built by the team here, and at the same time, we also have been figuring out how, parallel to developing the core functionalities, how do we create adoption? How should we develop the use and utility on the system? Talking a little bit to this, in terms of adoption and bringing it to market, what do you think what has been successful so far, in terms of where we're at? I'm not implying that we have a full go-to-market right now, but in terms of our approach to the adoption, and maybe can you talk a little bit about how the strategy has changed over this last year?
Last year, yeah. So I actually think it's actually, I'm going to steal one of your expressions now, Irina. Like, don't get ahead of the curve, right? So we need to do first things first, and that's of course also very important when you do such a system here. Before we can get any adoption, we need to have a system that works, and before we can get people to build, we need to have the right SDKs, interfaces, and a TVM working, so people can actually interact with the system and make transactions on top. And that's still a road which we're on, which is the main focus also now. We're working on this together with distribution of the system, so it becomes more resilient. But that's basically enabling use cases to work on the system. We already have one use case working with the system, the AN case, which has been the first case from the outset, and the partner to start with. They're like the first mover, so to speak. And from there on now, we have quite a lot of inquiries and interest to use the system and build on the system, and that's actually wonderful. That's very, very neat. But now, of course, we then need to provide the required tools and SDKs so people can actually build on the system themselves and actually work with the system to make their own transactions or contracts, and also to see the data. And that's, of course, one of the focuses we have now, to enable that adoption to go quicker, so it becomes easier to do.
Yeah, for sure. And when you say TVM, you mean the Tagion virtual machine, is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So enable people to create their own WebAssembly basically and get it executed within the system. So it becomes more, you could say, it becomes so other developers externally can actually program their own transactions or smart contracts for the system that can be executed in the system.
Mm-hmm. And parallel to this, of course, to onboard developers, the right documentation and education needs to be in place. I know that this has also been extensively worked on right now, documentation for the tech. Maybe if someone can drop a link in the chat for some of the docs, that would be great. Because also, from what I understand, over the next year, that's also going to be one of the focuses, actually, to invite developers and core community members to come on and start to work with it too. And of course, that's going to be available when SDKs are available, so you can build your own.
Yeah, exactly. So you can say already now we have the docs.tagion.org where you can go in and look up the core documentation of the system and also actually the protocols with methods you can execute against the system as a user basically. That you can go in there and read and already now actually use the system. You can also go into the GitHub page and set up your own, you could say your own test network or own version of the system to try to play with the system and develop your own, you could say, contracts on top of the system. We have a variety of CLI tools which can be used against the system as well and against the database. So all these things are actually well documented now and available both on GitHub and also on the documentation. But of course, the current level is still on, I would say, like still for developers can use it, but it's a bit maybe a bit lower, more like system developers still. But we are working on creating more like SDKs and the TVM, so it becomes easier for developers to interact with the system in a simpler manner.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm really excited for that. And yeah, great work on the docs. I think it's really important to.
And that's actually one of the biggest things
that.
That's also one of the things that actually happened here in December, or was it the start January? I don't recall anymore. Where we open sourced the code, we focused a lot on the documentation. The team has done a huge job here as well. So yeah, we are slowly opening up and make it usable for others. And it's of course it's a living document, right? It's not something that will never be perfect. It is not meant for like. It is what it is. It's a technical documentation. It's a documentation of the protocols of the system. So it's also meant for that target group, basically. But that's now at least out there. So that's actually extremely good to actually engage other core developers or even developers to start to play with the system.
Yes, for sure. And I know there has been quite a lot of questions from the community in the various channels about an explorer. Where you can view what's happening on the system. What is the kind of plan for this? Is there a plan?
Because I guess one of you guys maybe or another person asked on Telegram actually, what is the ETA for this? Like having an ether scan or something similar? And I answered like pretty, you could say. Non-precise. There is no ETA, but we are working with it, right? And we are who we are in terms of resources, of course. And right now, there's been done a lot of basic work to enable the data to be exposed on the kernel and also on the shell. So we can actually get access to some data that could be interesting to look at, for example, contract data or build data. So it's easy to look up data basically. So some of those, you can say, implementations have been worked with the last couple of months, and also in terms of communication protocols to make it easier to communicate with the shell and the system in general. Been a lot of work going on here, even though you cannot really see it. And that now enables us to start playing with more like creating proper APIs for example, an Explorer. And that's something I guess we will probably start with. Actually, this work has started, but we will start a more dedicated approach to this. I actually guess already next week we start working with it, especially on the API side to expose the first data. And then it would be wonderful there if there was somebody in the community who would like to build like a front end to it. That would be neat. But otherwise, the front end is going to be what it is. It's going to be very rough, but that's also cool enough, I guess. We also have full stack developers. They know a bit about HTML5, but it's going to be pretty rough. But yeah, so that's going to be worked on here the next couple of months as well. And it's actually all started. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So this is an insight into really like the tech capabilities and features that are being worked on. If we look a little bit broader now and kind of maybe go back a little bit to the roots and the origin of this project and your vision, both you and Christian and Karsten that started this project. I just wanted to circle to this for a moment because, you know, we've been pivoting a lot and figuring out the direction of what is the best approach to create adoption on the platform. And ultimately, you know, we're not building a one-size-fits-all platform where rather we're creating tools that can be customized to a specific context to enable people to have like ownership, control, and governance of real-world activities. Maybe, yeah, Christian or Thijs, you could just talk a little bit to why did you start this initially, and how do you feel now that we are revisiting and pivoting back actually to the original vision?
Yeah, it's a good question. And maybe I should share something. Something that's very old. It's actually pretty funny to find old stuff, especially when you're getting old like me. Not that old, but still, time is flying. Can I share? I don't know. Go line. Like that.
Yeah, if you guys just click the tab that says watch stream, you should be able to see it. If you're having any trouble.
So this slide deck is like 4.5 years old. We also have an old white paper, even older, where many of these thoughts were actually incorporated into. Like this project can be like, can you actually hear me and see this deck?
Yeah, could you go full screen, please?
I did.
Okay, we see the probably the other screen then. But never mind, it's fine. We can, at least I can read it on my screen. I don't know what it looks for everyone else.
Now something else is happening.
Otherwise, there's the if you go to the V's.
What about now?
No, but if you go to the V's menu or slideshow menu, one of them, there's an option. It's the slideshow menu. Sorry. Yeah, slideshow menu.
Yeah.
And then you can say that it should not use untick the brug præsentationsvisning. Yeah, and then you go full screen again with F5. Then
like this. Is this working?
No, it won't. Then you should. There's the one that says skærm automatic. You can change that as well. So it says that it should be in both the same on both screens. This is always annoying.
Now?
Nope.
It's okay. Maybe we can just talk to this a little bit in the interest of time.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, but the point is here actually. That's a good segue. So why we started this project in the first place? It's basically we come from different angles. So we have like a governance angle to it, and also a money angle to it, and then of course there is a technical angle to it. That's like the combination of the three. That's why we started this project in the first place. So we wanted to create a governance based on the idea of Elinor Ostrom's and how we can govern common resources. It's actually a pretty well thought out economic theory. She also won the Nobel Prize on how you can govern resources. And we are heavily inspired by this. and also network theory and how you can actually build different kinds of roles and defined by the activities in a system. From network theories and how we can then define actors and the contribution to the system. So we get like a system where all the participants in the system or actors who has a role and contributes can actually be rewarded for their work or paid for their work. And the one who are utilizing the system are then paying for it. So it becomes actually a sustainable whole, but also so all interests are visible and catered for, and not like, I don't know, like if you have a core team, for example, a Bitcoin core team who are not paid from the Bitcoin actually governance model, but from somebody else who has other interests, like, I don't know, a big commercial entity, for example, then of course they have some other skewed interests who are not visible to all of the community. So creating like a coherent governance model, it's extremely important, I think, to have a long time viable system which can actually develop and sustain itself for many years. That's the one. And then also, of course, the monetary part, and money means like generic money in the most generic way. It can be anything you can think of, basically, to have some kind of means of exchange we can use for collaboration. I got also a bit enlightened yesterday, but actually to create a real alternative to the current, you could say, banking system. That was also one of the main ideas. And in order to do this, you needed to have an infrastructure that could support this. And we tried first with optimizing some blockchain technology and so forth in the beginning. And then we pivoted to, you could say, a graph-based system, which is more scalable and have finality, meaning it has very many. It's a very good attribute if you have a financial system. You would like to have finality so you get ordering in your system, strict ordering. But that creates a lot of other problems. One of the problems is there is no implementations. There is a lot of problems we need to solve before it actually works in practice. And of course, a lot of those problems has been worked on extensively here in the team for many years now. So that's like why we started this project, was to create something that is owned by the community and can be governed in a healthy way, and give like an infrastructure where people can create their own money in their own communities, or wherever they want to actually create their own money or communities, and decide on how they can govern this themselves. That has been like the idea from the outset. I think that was some of the things you asked to, right, Irina?
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, because I think it's always nice to remember why we're building this. It's so often, especially in the rapid pace of development in the crypto space, it's often forgotten why things are being built, and it's always nice to be reminded of that. And it's also really good to point out that we're not designed to compete with Ethereum, because we're not trying to be a world computer. Not designed to compete with Filecoin, for example, because we're not trying to create, this storage database of large files and multimedia files, but actually the core and the focus is on high volume of small transactions. And this is a really good segue, I think, also to our conversation with Jonas, because based on extensive research and conducting interviews and figuring out what could be really a feasible use case for this kind of infrastructure, we think that creating toolkits for local alternative economies where a large amount of small or micro transactions are required is a good fit. So actually, yeah, we can talk a little bit about why, also with Jonas, and the logic behind this thinking. And it could be said that our aim for adoption right now is to run one or two pilots in this direction. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I understand, this is how we're pivoting also back to the origin story, and really trying to figure out how to create a new system of plurality of value for systems, and that communities can plug into. For example, Tagion could create a network of communities that each have their own currency, that use, sub ecosystems with the subDart database to facilitate exchanges at a local level. And I'd like to invite Jonas also for this talk, because when we're talking about creating a resilient system, it's important not to just talk about the tech, but we also need to understand and experiment about how we can actually create a socially resilient community to achieve, resilient economy and inclusive economies in the future. Because we all know that the system that is there right now is not working. So we're trying to figure out how to actually make something that benefits anyone without concentrating power in a very few nodes. So with that, hey Jonas, how's it going?
Hey, it's going good. Very
Nice,
much.
nice. Yeah, thanks for joining. Maybe we can start. Maybe we can just talk for 10 minutes or so before we move on to the network status. But let's briefly touch on why is there a problem in the current financial system? What is the problem with having a universal unit of account? That is somehow, we can see that undermining, mutual aid systems within communities, and accountability systems are broken, and so much wealth is concentrated at the top. What is going on? Why is the economic system that is dominant today failing the majority of people?
Yeah, it's a good and a very broad question. So it's probably not something I can answer adequately. I guess it also depends on what exactly you are, what kind of problem you identify. I guess there are tons of different problems. There's social inequality, nature, you know, overall well-being. There are tons of different problems which can be addressed, which needs to be fixed somehow. I guess one way to look at it is to and that's sort of the approach we're taking right now, is instead of seeing money as like this paternalistic thing that is being imposed upon local communities in a top-down fashion, we instead want to explore the option of having organic currencies, something that emerges organically and which is happens bottom up instead of from the top down. So that's sort of the approach we're taking right now, and the overall reason for doing that is simply it's a centralized system, money system. The ones that we have today, they're not really good at accounting for value on a local level. What actually creates value, what is valuable. But also it's really not that good at extending credit to, for example, small and medium-sized enterprises in the local community, etc. So there's overall it's like this. Also, in the ethos of blockchain, decentralizing the monetary system itself. Bitcoin does not decentralized at all. That's like it's a very at least not when you look at it from like a monetary perspective, it's like a global unit of account. And instead, it's about creating local currencies adapted or is able to accommodate the needs of the local communities. So that's sort of the what we're looking into right now. But yeah, I don't know if that adequately addressed your question, because it's but yeah, there's so many different things wrong with the current financial system. But I think also one thing I want to emphasize is that I think it goes for all of us, or maybe not. I would assume so, but at least in the Tagion Townhall team, that we believe that the current understanding of money that prevails in the crypto community is very, very rudimentary and quite skewed. It's simply wrong. It's stupid and it's outdated. So I think we can bring into light a better understanding of what money is and how it's supposed to be and how it actually can be used to foster a more inclusive, fair, and sustainable economy.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a really important point that you touch on. And I think this idea of inaccessibility in the current financial system is important to address as kind of a root problem, because a lot of people, simply don't have access to credit system or access to credit, so they cannot build their house. They cannot do things that people who have access to banking facilities can do. Maybe we can talk a little bit more about this in the context of how we can actually make it more accessible, and what kind of
Yeah.
things, what kind of
So you're talking
instruments.
like potential use cases.
Yeah, possibly. Just because we're quite short on time, maybe, yeah, we can actually give a few cases now, because that will, I think, create a clear understanding of the possibilities and the kind of ideas that we're exploring and that we want to put into practice. And this, of course, the cases that we're showing are hypothetical at this point, but we are in the process of doing feasibility analysis and figuring out who we should partner with to be able to develop these in the most impactful way.
Yeah. Okay, so I think what I'm just gonna do here, I'll just try it out. I just took a screenshot of like a an image. I don't know if you see it in the chat now.
Let's have a
I
look.
can also share my screen if that's better. I just thought, then we have it in the chat so people can revisit it.
Yeah,
If they want
maybe.
to.
Yeah, I think both. Maybe drop it in the
Both.
chat so people can
Drop
see
it
it
in the chat and
after.
then also share my screen. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Just a
this
second.
recording will go online afterwards also.
Yeah. Then, okay.
And by the way, guys, if anyone has any questions so far, just feel free to ask them.
Okay. So can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you
Oh,
guys download?
it keeps saying this weird sound like. I don't know if it's only on my computer, but
It may be someone jumping in and out of the room.
yeah. Okay. I'll see if I can ignore it. Okay. But yeah, these are just because I know when we talk about these, alternative credit systems or alternative currency systems or alternative financial products, it quickly becomes very abstract. So just for you to have like kind of a visualization what we mean when we talk about these things, we have like here just two theoretical
Yes.
concepts of how it could look like.
Before you go into detail, can you just go in present mode so you have a full screen?
Oh yeah. Um,
To the left.
then,
Left.
yeah, actually, what?
Yeah. So there's
I'm
a little
I'm quite the PowerPoint noob. So
to the right.
so
There's a little bit. There's a little.
oh,
Yeah.
is it that one? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, nice.
Nice.
That's like I don't know.
Oh.
Oh, that was, but then it starts from like the beginning. Like, okay, can we just do it like this and then I zoom in?
Yeah, that's fine.
There's a drop down next to where you can present from the slide you're standing at.
This one? I don't know where it is.
It's okay. Just go
Yeah,
for
we
it.
need
It's
we need to
okay.
prepare better next time, or I need to prepare better next time. Sorry about that. Okay, so this is like something called multilateral obligation setup, or what you simply just can call clearing. It's something that banks do Either they do it through the central banks, they do it through central counterparty clearinghouses, or they simply do it using their own balance sheets. But it's really just a way of economizing on your capital. And in financial literature, you also commonly refer to it as a liquidity saving mechanism, because essentially it reduces the need for entities to hold cash. So just to give you an example of how that could look like, what we are currently exploring is the idea of having so let's say there is in the company, or sorry, in the economy, there are two companies, A and B, which are like they're trading together. A sells a good to company B with $90, and company B sells a good with $100 to company A. So instead of these two companies sending each other respectively $90 and $100, they can simply just net the payments. Simply find the difference between the two payments, the payables and receivables. So instead, they simply need to pay $10 in this case. So that's sort of the logic of bilateral clearing. Then you can make it multilateral clearing, simply meaning there are multiple entities involved in this process. And then what we can do is that if a lot of companies they upload their payables and receivables, cash inflows and cash outflows, what they need to pay and what they receive from other companies, then potentially, or not potentially, but that's actually what we can do. Then we can find these payment cycles within the economy. So, for example, company A might pay or owe company B 100, company B might owe company C $90, and company C might owe company D $90, and company D might owe company A $70. So, if you were to put all of this together, that would be like 200 or $350 or something like that. They actually would need to hold. But instead, what we can do is that we actually net the payment. So again, find the difference between the payments. And then we can see that, whereas company A before had to pay $100, now they actually only have to pay $30. So that's where sort of the liquidity saving mechanism comes into play. And I think that's quite a novel idea. It's something that has been used in Slovenia. I think it is for since the beginning of the 90s, and it greatly reduces the need for companies to hold cash. So essentially, it becomes a lot more easy for them to run a business. That's sort of the main idea. But that's just like one way you could actually stimulate the economy, stimulate small and medium-sized enterprises by having a clearing system on the Tagion network. And of course, all of this should be or will be powered by the Tagion token. Another example could be complementary currencies, which is a very similar concept to a large degree. But just for some clarity, when we say complementary currency, we simply mean a alternative currency that complements the current or conventional money system. So that's fiat money. And here it's defined as means to stimulate the local economy. It's issued locally and spent locally. But actually, you can use complementary currencies or local currencies for multiple different things. It could also be for environmental purposes, and it could also be for care or stuff like that. There are tons of different ways in which you can actually use a complementary currency to stimulate different parts of the economy within a community. But yeah, so here it's just to say that we use what's called mutual credit to overcome cash shortage. So it's a way again for to stimulate businesses within the local economy. So it could be that company A buys company B buys a coffee from company A, and for that they pay 100 of whatever this currency is called to company A. And the important thing to emphasize here is that these 100 money did not necessarily exist beforehand. It's essentially just a creditor debtor scheme or register. So whenever company B transfers 100 currency to company A, what happens is essentially that company A's asset side will be credited 100 of these currencies, which then represents a claim on the community. And similarly for company B, we would then record it on the liability side as 100x currency now owed to the community. This is a way of actually creating credit within a system that is not denominated in, or not necessarily denominated in fiat currency. And I realize this may sound a bit far-fetched, like, with a system like this, there work in practice. And yeah, there's actually tons of examples of this working in practice. Where, for example, just to give you one example, in Sardinia, they have a system called SADX, which was launched in the aftermath of the financial crisis. And today it's quite huge. I actually think there's 4 or 5,000 businesses integrated into this network, and they
40,000.
40.
Yeah.
Okay, that's okay. That's more than I realized. Yeah. So this is to give you one example. Also, Switzerland, where I'm at right now, they also have VIA, which is also a huge alternative complementary currency. And yeah, in Denmark, we also, in the 30s, back in the 30s, after the Great Depression, there was also a lot of currencies emerging, but they actually became so big that they were outlawed. And for example, in Denmark, it's still prohibited to issue complementary currencies, but I think that's the place in the world to actually do it. So
Yeah, but that's really interesting, and yeah, thanks for sharing this and also bringing some real cases. Just to wrap up on this before we move on, this was also to show that to address the problem of accessibility of credit, we have the opportunity now to actually create alternative ways of creating credit systems, and also this is a new generation of complementary currency, because the use cases that were made in Italy and the UK and Switzerland all were based still on either paper money or centralized databases and mechanisms. So there's actually a real potential to create these kind of systems with transparency and privacy, and also connect them at scale. And this is what we're researching and running feasibility analysis on at the moment. But thank you so much, Jonas. If anyone feels like more about this, feel free to reach out to Jonas, and we're happy to share knowledge. And also maybe we can put together some docs with the further reading for this also.
Yep.
Great. So in the last 10 minutes or so, I'd love to get a status on what's going on in the network. How is it working? Where are we? So I'd love to invite Philip and Lucas for the chat.
Hello.
Hello. Thanks so much for your time for this. We know you're super busy right now. Hey, Lucas, and developing before and working on the TVM and everything. How's it going? Good, I guess. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. I just go. We're sitting in the same space, so it's a bit with all the microphones and so on. I think it's going very good with the network. It's kind of a different process this year, you could say, because we've gone from developing on something that's not that's not running to actually developing on something that's running. So I think that's a pretty big shift. But I think it's going good. We are still focusing on fixing problems that are sometimes coming up, but I actually think it's very good. We haven't found anything new really. in terms of bugs, other than the things that we've been working on for some time now. And so yeah, I think it's going very good. Yeah.
That's great. That's really reassuring. I know you guys have been working already on the distributing the nodes. Before we dive into the status on that, can you just maybe elaborate on the difference between distribution and decentralization?
Yeah, definitely. So the big difference between distribution and decentralization is basically that a distributed system is something that is hard to take down in the sense that you have to destroy multiple computers. But the thing with decentralization is that you don't have to trust the other parts in the system. So you're expecting that someone in the system might be acting maliciously. Whereas in a distributed system, you expect the other ones to also basically not act in a malicious way. So that's like the biggest thing. So it's much easier to distribute something than it is to decentralize something, because when you decentralize, then you can't trust anyone other than yourself. So you have to be able to verify everything, that all the packages are correct, and that you are not forking the hash graph, for example, and loads of other stuff. So what we're working on now is basically first the distribution part. So basically getting it out to different machines. Currently, we are still running on one machine, so we want to distribute it out to multiple machines also, so that we have a more resilient network than what we have now. And then the next step after that will then be the decentralization, which is more in terms of protocols against malicious nodes and so on. And also the decentralization part is also where you have swapping in the hash graph. So you have to have the governance in place, so you know how the system is governed. And that's also really the point where you could say that it's completely out of our hands as developers. Currently, we still have a lot of control over the code, but once it's decentralized, it's very hard to change stuff, because you're then at the point where an update has to be accepted by a majority of the nodes in the system, and this of course takes time. So it's very important that once you're decentralized, that you have the correct that you know exactly what you want, because as it's been seen on multiple other networks, such as just Bitcoin, for example, they try to increase the block time, the block size, sorry, many times, but have failed every time, because yeah, so a lot of people can't agree to it and so on, and then there's been multiple forks. But it's of course best to have everyone on board and agree. So yeah, something like that would probably have been good for Bitcoin to have right in the first place.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And in terms of distributing the nodes, how far do you think we will come this year?
So actually, we this month had a pretty big success with we've been able to run mode 1 for quite a few some time now, but we actually have automated testing of it now. So as Thijs also mentioned in the start, we've really changed the way we develop. So we focus a lot on testing now. Basically, if it's not tested, it doesn't work. And we've been able to create a test that actually starts the mode 1 network now, and listens for epochs and so on, and it's actually working. So that's a pretty big step for us. So hopefully, I think it's definitely doable that we have a completely distributed system at the end of the year. I'm not sure about decentralization yet. It's a much bigger task, but distribution will definitely have, I think, actually quite soon, but I don't want to promise anything.
Yeah, of
It's
course.
also more of a question of infrastructure, actually, because the hard part is also setting up the correct infrastructure to support having nodes on different machines. It becomes much more difficult to manage when you have this type of setup, you could say.
May I just add to it, Philip? It's Christian
Yeah,
here.
of course.
There's a big part of decentralization, and that's also that has to do with the governance models that are being set up. And we have spent quite a lot of time diving into this, but this is something that needs to be developed together with the community. So we are counting on people to show interest in this and help us develop very good ways of getting a good, you can say, a part of it is likely to be a social governance model as part of what we will be doing to have a properly decentralized system where you cannot buy your way to power, so to say. So governance is also a very, very important part that we will be spending a lot of time on to proper decentralize.
Yeah, that's really important
Yeah,
point also you bring up because right now if we look at, for example, proof of work, which is the consensus mechanism on Bitcoin, it's rewarding those with the most computational power, which is not sustainable technically or environmentally of the long run. And an Ethereum proof of stake mechanism rewards the validators based on those who can risk the most tokens, which means that those people who already have tokens have prioritization, which creates an unequal access. Yes, first, it could be argued that it's a secure way to verify the network. However, because our focus here is really on creating also socially resilient community mechanisms around it, we want to explore governance where this is embedded in it. So yes, just adding to what you said, Christian, I think that's a really important point.
and if I may also add another thing, about this distribution and so on is actually also that a lot of nodes that are running on different networks right now are called nodes, but in theory they're just what I would define as mirror nodes, basically. So I also think that's something we will explore in the coming months. And a mirror node would basically be something that would actually allow us more easily to do something like the Explorer, for example. And it's basically a node that runs the database, but it just subscribes to the hash graph and the database and receives information. So that's also a way, actually, it also creates resilience, you could say, because then the data is copied out onto multiple machines. Because I know that a lot of people have been asking, how can I set up a node and so on. So I actually think that might be a way for people to soon have something running on their own machines, which I think could be quite fun for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Cool. That's really cool to hear. And any other updates you'd like to share? I heard on the grapevine that there's been some development on the WASM, the WebAssembly, and something to do with having smart contracts in the browser. Is this a rumor or is this true?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily call it smart contracts in the browser, but what we have made basically is we've made a pipe cleaner on getting WASM to work with D. So Carsten, he's been spending some time on basically making a minimalized version of the D runtime so that we can actually export our code to WASM so we can compile it to WASM basically. And WASM is basically a virtual machine language instruction set, you could say, which we then can compile to, and this code is basically able to run everywhere. So what we're working on now is creating the standard library for creating smart contracts, and it's still very early. We want to get this right, but we actually have had something like, for example, SecP signatures running in the browser, which is quite cool. And the good thing about this WASM is that it can be used everywhere. So it will be easily able to run in a browser or on a phone or wherever you might want to do it, on Windows or something else completely. So yeah, and that's also why we want to use it for the smart contracts. Basically, is that all languages can compile to it. So, for example, if someone wants to write their smart contracts in Rust or C++ or something else, they can compile to WASM. They will also be able to use the system. So instead of just allowing D-Lang developers to produce contracts on the network or Solidity developers or something like this, actually everyone will be able to who can compile to WASM will be able to create smart contracts in whatever they want. So yeah.
I think that's a really important point because that creates like a language agnostic system and enables for accessibility on the network level also. And that kind of, well documented, well tested standard also means that it's safe language. So, you reduce the risk of I don't know, language errors or using the old version of a language or something like this. So that's pretty exciting. So what, in brief, before we wrap up, what are the applications of this, of the fact that everyone can compile to WASM if you know how to? What are the ramifications of this for the developer community?
I think how should I put it? I think like WASM is kind of like the hot new thing in the programming. So all development is basically focusing around supporting it even better around the entire table for all programming languages. And the reason for this is, of course, that you can run your code everywhere. So a great example of a company who is really pushing on this is actually Figma, if you know that. And they actually, everything they do is running in WASM. And I think that's a quite good example. And that's also why it's able to run so many different places, even though actually being a very complex product. So I think the ramifications of it is that we're really following the wave of the newest trend inside both crypto, but also in the general developer community by allowing our system to execute WASM as smart contracts.
That's really cool. And
I think that's the best answer.
Yeah, that's an amazing answer because there's been, there's been complications in the crypto community of interoperability, and also, if you wanna code, if you wanna contribute to Ethereum, you need to know Solidity. To know Solidity, you have to learn a whole language from scratch. This helps also create interoperability and different opportunities for developers coming from different ecosystems to actually build out things on Tagion. So that's really exciting. Can you drop a link maybe for those interested to read up a bit on this? If you have any good resources to share, that'll be great.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, just drop it in the chat. Amazing, but thanks for the update. And everyone also feel free to ask your questions in the tech channel if you have anything specific to this topic. Before we wrap up, does anyone have any questions? Otherwise, you can always continue the chat in the text channel. No, that's good, I guess. But I hope this was fruitful, and thanks so much everyone for being here. It was really nice to catch up, and we really welcome feedback on this and on the format and on content. So please, if you have any feedback, also drop it in the chat. Yeah, thanks so much for your time, and see you next time.
Cheers.
See you guys.
Thanks. See you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.